Hello, my name is Ryan Willison, and these are the book reviews for ARC 602, Slums and Sequoias. The first book that I read was Slums: How Informal Real Estate Markets Work, and this was a quite an interesting book. It was written in three parts and contained three perspectives: the comparative perspectives, anthropological perspectives, and the public policy perspectives. The first chapters were about the comparative perspectives, and they took a look at how legal entities and regulations could affect these emergent settlements. They compared multiple settlements to see how, again, how they had effect on each of these areas. The second part was pertaining to the anthropological perspectives, and that focused on settlements in India and Brazil, and kind of took a stab at defining informal and formal definitions. The phrases legal limbo and dependent on political whim and will were used, and I thought that was pretty telling. The third part was public policy perspectives, and that took a look at examples of policy and program intervention in these settlements, which was great because it acknowledged the rights of the dwellers, people who live there, but also helped to improve the lives and the living conditions of these people. Um, One thing that I kind of thought about, especially that third part, was kind of regardless of how these slums came to be, like if it was because of a lack of governance, excuse me, or because the government was too strict, that the development that the government was trying to do, the public policies weren't always effective or necessary, and sometimes it made the conditions worse for these people. The natural system that I selected were sequoia trees, and the book about the sequoia trees was titled Enduring Giants. This book also was written in three parts, which was the natural history of the giant sequoias and human history, and the movement to preserve the Calaveras Grove. The first part I really enjoyed probably the most. It was the natural history of the giant sequoia, and it was talked more about the sequoia trees, their lifespan, their life cycle, how they were germinated, and how big they got. I mean, they're massive. The second part was about giant sequoias and human history, and it spoke a lot about what I'm calling human intervention in the forests. There were parts regarding the Native Americans and how they would utilize the space around the trees or the trees themselves, and then further on, during like the westward expansion, how when Americans came and defined ownership to these lands and what they did with them. The third part here is the movement to preserve the Calaveras Grove, which is amazing. It's great. Preserving these trees and these forests, I think personally, is really important, and it's because of these people that we still can witness and see how big these trees are right now. Um, I like this book quite a bit, and the one of my major takeaways was regarding the actual sequoia trees and how the specific requirements they need to germinate and sprout happens right after a forest fire. I just think that's was quite amazing. Um, Now, combining these two books together or finding a common thread, originally when I chose them, I had chosen or I was going to focus on the idea of informal transactions, and that's kind of how slums or emergent settlements how they work. They're all informal transactions, they're bribes, they're trades, things like that. And I thought that a forest like every transaction in a forest is informal, right? Like a breeze carries a seed somewhere, or a river carries an animal and it just lands here. Like all these, everything is informal in a forest. I love that. But again, the main takeaway I'm focusing on now is this aspect of the fire and how fire is used in emergent settlements by the powers that be, the overhead powers, to try to remove these people, and also how fire is an extreme threat. And it's also a threat to forests. I mean, forest fires are huge, they're devastating, but I really like how the sequoia tree can thrive after a fire. Specifically, the conditions are perfect.